Shalom, shalom, Davon Mays here with Clouds of Torah Presents. Today we're going to talk about, is money the root of all evil? We've heard this said many, many times, so let's go right into it and see, where does this come from? Why are people saying this? So, rich men can be righteous or wicked. We know Abraham was rich and righteous. Nabal, wicked. Job, righteous. So, of course, you go through the Tanakh, you see plenty of wicked people and plenty of righteous people who have money. So it's not necessarily, automatic what, money can do to people, because people can start off righteous or start off wicked and turn things around, depending on the person and their circumstances. So what is the root of all evil? See, a lot of people are not familiar with different translations. So let's go into 1 Timothy 6:10, where this phrase comes from. 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. The Catholic Public Domain version says, for desire is the root of all evils. Some persons hungering in this way have strayed from the faith and have entangled themselves in many sorrows. The Coverdale Bible in 1535 says, for covetousness is the root of all evil, which while some lusted after, they erred from the faith and entangled themselves with many sorrows. So covetousness and desire is the words chosen by the Catholic and the Coverdale Bibles describing the love of money. So we know that covetousness is basically wanting what somebody else has, and a lot of times is something of value, which can be viewed as a type of money, because money is there's value there. So you can kind of see where they got the translation from. So, probably for our generation, the translation of love of money, resonates a little bit more. But at the same time, in 1535, the word covetousness was chosen. So just so some background information on the verse. So covetousness, Tyndale Bible of 1526, for covetousness is the root of all evil, while some lusted after, they erred from the faith, entangled themselves with many sorrows. Geneva Bible of 1587, for the desire of money is the root of all evil, which while some lusted after, they erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. The Douay-Rheims Bible, for the desire of money is the root of all evil, which some coveting have erred from the faith and have entangled themselves in many sorrows. So overall, the concept is true. Chasing money and desire and covetousness is not a good thing to do. You create a bunch of problems, or as they say, pierce yourselves over with many sorrows. This is overall pretty true, but it's really not accurate as far as to say it's the root of all evil. Now, it can be a root of many evils, because a lot of stuff is done in the name of money, but not everything is done in the name of money. So 4491, Riza, definition of root, usage, the source, which comes from the root, a descendant. So in 1 Timothy, in the Wycliffe Bible, 1 Timothy 6:10 says, for the root of all evils is covetousness, which some men coveting erred from the faith and beset themselves with many sorrows, and beset them with many sorrows. Why I repeated that. Anyway, so the source or the root, it's not definitely the root of all evils, but it's definitely a root to some of the evils again. So 37:13, origo, covet, after, desire, middle voice of apparently a prolonged form of an obsolete primary, compare oros, to stretch oneself, i.e. reach out after, long for, covet after, desire. So something that you want, right? To stretch oneself, like I really want that. That makes sense. So you get what's going on here. But to say it's the root of all evil, as far as money goes. Now, coveting is wanting something that you don't have, that belongs to somebody else usually. So I get that part, but to call it money, I don't think is so accurate. it can be applied, but it's not specifically just money. So common translation for the love of money is the root of all evil. I don't think that's the best translation. I think desire or covetousness is probably a better translation. So again, covetousness, 5365, philargia, or philargyria. Not sure exactly how to pronounce that. Philargyria. Well, this has a Y, so I'll read this one. Philargyria, I guess. Usage, love of money, avarice, covetousness. Well, again, covetousness can be a love of money, but it's not necessarily just money, because you can covet a house, you can covet a car, you can covet somebody's yard, you can covet their wife. These are not necessarily forms of money, but they are things that people value, like I said before. Covetousness, Luke 16:14, and the Pharisees also, who were covetous, heard all these things, and they derided him. So Ellicott's commentary for English reader says the word for covetous is literally lovers of money. Well, let's say that that's true. That doesn't mean money is the root of all evil, just because these people were lovers of money, right? Can't really use the broad brush. You shall not covet. Deuteronomy 5:21. You neither shalt thou desire thy neighbor's wife, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's house. His field or his manservant or his maidservant, his ox or his ass, or anything that is thy neighbor's. Now, all these things are valuable, right? If you have a servant, you have maidservants, you have an ox, you have a donkey, or anything that's your neighbor's. So the word kamad, definition to desire, to take pleasure in. So that's a little different spin on it, right? The NASB translation says attracted, to be attracted to these things. Coveted, delight, desirable, desires, pleasing, precious things, took great delight. So these things that you can take pleasure in, it's not necessarily money though. It's things money can buy. You can buy a servant. You can buy a donkey and things of this nature, but it's not necessarily money. So are we talking about money, or are we just talking about the desire to have something, to take pleasure in something, to want a man's wife? That's a pleasure thing. You want his manservant or his maidservant. If you're a woman, right, and you see the manservant's next door, or you're a man and you see the neighbor's maidservant next door, right? Or you don't have a donkey, so you want his donkey to plow your field or whatever. You're wanting something that's not yours. So, lovers of money or covetous. 2 Timothy 3:2, King James Bible. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. All bad traits, right? So again, in NIV, people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy. So lovers of money in this word covetous keeps getting, exchanged for one another. So here goes this word again. So the lovers of money in the 5366 in the Strongs. Lovers of money is not necessarily coveting, because if you're rich and you really don't need the money, you can still covet. So it's not really about the money. It's just I see something that belongs to somebody else that I want. It's not that you can't afford it. You just want what they got. You can have 100 maidservants, but you want his maidservant. You can have 100 cars, but you want his car. You see what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily a money thing. It's about you just want something that belongs to somebody else. There's like the evil inclination wants that. You have 5 wives, right? In ancient times, a king had like 18 wives. That doesn't mean, he's a lover of money just because he wants another man's wife, right? That's not a money thing. David didn't take Uriah's wife because of money. He just took it out of desire. It had nothing to do with money. You cannot serve God and mammon. So what people do is, I've heard this taught, in the church, is that they try to couple money is the root of all evil with Matthew 6:24. No man can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, mammon being money. In Matthew 19:23, then Jesus said to his disciples, "Surely I say to you that it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." So they all bring it back to see, when you are a lover of money, it brings you all these problems, which is a true statement. But this is really not consistent with the Tanakh, because it basically tries to paint a picture that people who are rich cannot enter the kingdom of heaven, which is not taught in the Torah. People who commit sins cannot enter the kingdom of heaven, but all sins are not related to the love of money. Again, it could be desire and coveting, which is not always necessarily money related. It could just be a desire you have. So the reason I'm bringing so much New Testament verses is because this is how it's taught, and these are the verses that is used to basically push the verse in Timothy onto people as if money is the main problem. That's not true, because churches love money. So they really gonna hold to that? They pass that basket around every Sunday, don't they? They're gonna say, "Oh, that's not for the love of money." But what is it? Is it for the love of money? Is it to pay the bills? Is it to get that pastor the new Benz? What, there's many different things people can do in these churches with that money. I'm not saying all of them are corrupt or nothing like that. But overall, it's not the money. It's what people do with the money and how you get the money, which is a whole nother conversation. But that's why I'm bringing up these New Testament verses, because they really don't accurately portray money as the Tanakh does. So was this money motivated? Genesis 3:6. So when the woman saw that that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. What Eve did was disobey a command. Was that evil? Right? If it was evil, was it motivated by money or desire? Now, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but I don't think there was any money in the Garden of Eden as far as currency as we know it today. So when she did something which was disobey God, which you can view as evil, there was no money behind that. She didn't think she was going to get rich. She didn't have a concept of being rich and buying stuff, because none of those things were present. But she did have a desire to be wise. It says a tree desirable to make one wise. She wanted wisdom. It was pleasant to the eyes. We talked about pleasure. It looked good, and it made her think she was going to get some information, some wisdom, but it was not money motivated. So money is not the root of all evil. It can't be, because if this was evil by disobeying God, there was no money involved. So you have to be very careful when you go through these translations and teach something based off of the translation. And you got to tie it back to see, does it really, rock with the Torah or not? Because this verse that has nothing to do with money, as far as I can see. Was this money motivated? Genesis 4:1-8. Now Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, would you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. So was this motivated by money? Because Abel was not selling his sacrifice to the Most High, his offering. He was giving it, right? It says Abel brought the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. So he was given the best of his flock, and the best of his possessions. So was this money motivated? Because Cain has stuff to give too. So where's the money in this evil? Because it says Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. It doesn't say it was like his best, because the firstborn, is usually a sign of, something that takes precedence over the other things. The firstborns have a lot more value in things of this nature. So how it's usually taught is that Cain just brought, whatever he felt like bringing. It wasn't necessarily his best. Is why it says the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he didn't respect Cain and his offering. So this was more of jealousy of trying to play the favoritism card. Oh, you like his stuff, but you don't like mine. But you gave him mediocre stuff. He gave the Most High his best. You gave him whatever you felt like giving him. Or maybe you kept the best for yourself. So this was not necessarily money motivated, was it? Was money the cause for the flood? Genesis 6:2. The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. Genesis 6:5. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. Doesn't necessarily say that it was money motivated. Now, there's a lot of teachings and theories and stories about why exactly the flood came. That's not the purpose of this specific lecture. But the question is was it money motivated? Taking the wives for themselves, all whom they chose. If they were just taking women, it's not like the women was choosing them because they was rich. They was just taking women. That's not necessarily a money motivator. It'd be different if it says that they were taking and selling the women, then that would be money motivated. If it says the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually because they were buying and selling of goods, things of that nature, that could be money motivated. But we don't see that. We just see the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, meaning just it says there was violence in the earth. There's all type of other things going on, but it doesn't necessarily talk about this was money motivated to disobey and, bring this destruction on themselves. So when the Most High does give you money, he can add no sorrow to it. Proverbs 10:22, the blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. So we know the famous saying, more money, more problems. That's because it's not blessed money. I'm going to say that again. More money, more problems means it's not blessed money. Everybody who's rich don't have more money, more problems, situations going on. Things can come up, for sure. But there can be blessed money and cursed money. Ecclesiastes 6:2, a man to whom God giveth riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wanteth nothing for his soul of all that he desireth, yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof, but a stranger eat of it. That is vanity, and it is an evil disease. So he gives you all this, but you don't really get to enjoy it. It's called a disease by Solomon. It says, the man whom God hath given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wants nothing else. He don't need nothing else. Nothing for his soul of all that he desires. But God does not give him the power to eat of it. You don't get to enjoy that. That's more money, more problems. But the blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. And can you be a lover of money and get the blessing of the Lord? Depends on how you get it. What if you love money to do mitzvot, to do mitzvahs, to do charity? What if you just love to do charity and you love to make money so you can do charity? You love having fundraisers and you take all that money and you give it away. Are you a lover of money? Yeah. Are you doing good with it? Yeah. Do you have the blessing of the Lord that makes one rich and he has no sorrow with it? Yeah. But if you love money, but you out here trapping, you out here doing dirt, you stealing, blackmailing, hacking, then you ain't gonna get to enjoy that money. So there is a difference. You can be a lover of money. That doesn't make you wicked. It depends on what you do with it and how you got it. The Lord is the maker of them all. Proverbs 22:2. The rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. So one pretty decent teaching I heard on this. When I say decent, I mean like a really good teaching. I shouldn't have said decent, but a really good teaching. The poor pray more and the rich can give more. Because people say, why are there poor people in the world? Well, everybody has a different test, for sure. So if you was rich and that wasn't part of your test, no, let me rephrase that. If you was rich and you had a problem with being stingy, then that's going to be part of your test, right? If you're poor, then you probably don't have a problem with being stingy. You just had a problem with talking to God. Because what happens when you're rich? You wake up in a mansion, got a bank full of money, cars, closet full of clothes, best food, chef downstairs cooking you up some food. You're not so motivated to pray to God when you have everything that you can wish for. I'm not saying that there aren't righteous people who have all that and don't pray, and you know what I mean? So you can wake up and thank God for that completely, for sure. But I'm not going to say the average person, but overall, you can see why people would not be so quick to pray to God when they have everything that they want or need, opposed to a poor person who wakes up hungry, looks around in his little shack or wherever he's living, broke, owe people money, right? Scraping to get some change to get on the bus. They're going to pray to God more. They're going to be more motivated to pray. But again, let's say you're that rich guy and you love to do charity. You love helping people. Then you have this money to help people. So when God makes people rich and poor, one is not necessarily better than the other one because it depends on your test. If you have a problem with giving people money, God may give you a whole bunch of money just to see what you're going to do with it. Just to see. Proverbs 17:3. The refining pot is for silver and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests the hearts. So he's going to see who you really are, rich or poor. Doesn't really matter if you're rich or poor at the end of the day, because you can't take it with you. It's what did you do in this world? What impression did you leave in this world? Excuse me. There's people who really didn't have a lot of money, but left very huge marks on the world that aren't financially, but they help people. The street's named after people who probably died broke. You know how many entertainers died broke? How many football players and basketball players and movie stars died broke due to taxes or money mismanagement? So, you know, being rich is really not the stamp of success. It's what you did with the money. And even being poor, you can make a lot of impacts even though you're poor. There's a verse that says, there was a poor wise man who saved the city, but nobody remembered him. But he was a savior. He saved the city. There was a poor wise man. So if he was a rich man, maybe he wouldn't have saved the city. Maybe he would have saved himself. Who knows? But look it up. There's a verse. Proverbs is very useful in looking at all these things from different perspectives. Read your Proverbs. Do not overwork to be rich. Proverbs 23:4. Do not overwork to be rich because of your own understanding. Cease. You don't have to overthink stuff to get rich. You do have to put in effort. But you don't have to. Hard work doesn't guarantee riches. It can help. There are people who say, I worked hard, that's how I got rich. This is true. But that's not a guarantee. There's a lot of people who work hard and fail. You know how many startups actually make it? Most startups fail, statistically. Do you think all the things you see on Shark Tank that get deals become successful? Some do, some don't. And they got the Shark Tank money behind them, but everything's not successful. Proverbs 28:20. A faithful man will abound with blessings, but he who hastens to be rich will not go unpunished. Why? Because if you hasten to be rich, you're probably going to make mistakes and cut corners and do shiesty stuff to get that money. And here's an example, Genesis 31:7. And your father have deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. Laban was a shiesty dude, and he kept playing with Jacob's money. Jacob made him rich, and he kept messing with his money, kept changing his wages. And what happened to Laban? He lost it all. The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Genesis 31:1. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's, he has acquired all his wealth. All this wealth. Genesis 31:14-16. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there still any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. For all these riches which God has taken from our father are really ours and our children's. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do it. Remember, Jacob was like, it's time for me to go. It's time for me to leave here. And what did he leave with? All that money. Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Case in point, Laban was a sinner, and all the money he got ended up giving it to Jacob. Right there in the verses. Now, was Jacob a lover of money? No, he worked for his wives. He earned it. He went through a lot to get that money. And the Most High really is the one who gave it to him in the end, because Laban was shady, right? Is money the answer to all things or the root of all evil? So this brings us back, right? Ecclesiastes 10:19. A feast is made for laughter and wine makes merry, but money answers everything. So that really can't be the root of all evil if it answers everything. It can be a root to some evils. People do steal and kill and cheat and do horrible things for money, but you can do a lot of good things with money. Ecclesiastes 7:12, for wisdom is a defense and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. So knowledge and wisdom, right? This is what's going to drive what you do with your money. Wisdom is a defense, right? It protects you. Money can protect you physically and spiritually. You can, let's say you build a yeshiva, you give away a lot of charity. You earning spiritual points from having so many people learn Torah. And you ever read Psalm 41 where it says, blessed is he who looks after the poor, he will be delivered, he will not be given into the hands of his enemies. That's defense. That's a big defense. So overall, we could see that wisdom and money can go hand in hand. Knowledge and money can go hand in hand. So what to do when you get a bag? You got to take care of home. Proverbs 7:20. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home on the appointed day. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home on the appointed day, meaning he done left the house. He's out doing business. He's doing something, but his wife knows he ain't home. So what's she doing in Proverbs? Read the chapter. You see what's going on because he ain't nobody home. He out with money. Depending on what kind of dude he is, she know what kind of dude he is, and she probably know what he out there doing. For good or bad, you never know, depending on the situation. But again, he got a bag, he ain't at the crib. And we see what happens in Proverbs 7:20 when you ain't at the crib. Proverbs 15:27. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. So if you greedy for gain, you really never ain't at home, right? You out, or you causing problems because of the stuff you doing in the streets. You bringing trouble to your house. Now, this can be when the love of money gets you caught up, for sure. Proverbs 27:8, like a bird that wanders from its nest is a man who wanders from his place. You wander from your place when either you out there chasing money or you got money and you ain't doing right with it. So what to do when you get a bag? Take care of home. How interesting. He has taken a bag with him. The Torah speaks our language today. My power and the might of mine hand have gotten me this wealth. Deuteronomy 8:13-18. And when thy herds and thy flocks multiply, and thy silver and thy gold is multiplied, and all that thou hast is multiplied, then thine heart be lifted up, and thou forget the Lord thy God, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, who led thee through the great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery serpents and scorpions, and drought, where there was no water, who brought thee forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed thee in the wilderness with manna, which thy fathers knew not, that he might humble thee, and that he might prove thee to do thee good at thy latter end. And thou say in thine heart, my power and the might of mine hand has gotten me this wealth. But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant with thee, which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day. So people, they get prideful, and they get, the arrogance comes out. My power and the might of my hand has gotten me this wealth. It was me. I put in the work. I did this. I did that. This is true. You probably did do some work, but he gave you a brain. He gave you a planet full of resources. He gave you people around you. He gave you health so you can get around, right? There's a lot of things that come into play for you to get this wealth. So always remember God. Always remember God with what you do. So the love of money can be a problem, but it's not the root of all evils, but it can be a root to many evils. And is it really the love of money or coveting, which is not necessarily always attached to money? So at the end of the day, this is the gift of God. Ecclesiastes 5:18-19. Behold, that which I have seen is good and comely for one to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor. What comes with labor? Money. That he taketh under the sun all the days of his life, which God giveth him, for it is his portion. Every man also to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and have given him power to eat thereof, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. So it says God has given him power to eat thereof and take his portion. Go get yours. There's nothing wrong with getting money. It's how you get it and what you do with it. So I'll conclude that money is not the root of all evil, but it can be a root to many evils. Coveting is a problem. Don't want what somebody else got, get your own. It's plenty of earth, plenty of resources, plenty of money out in the world. Get your own. And with that, I'll stop and we'll see you next time. Shalom.